I'm Bob Burrish with Novus, and I am also the Senior Vice President for WPSA and the Branch Secretary for our USA branch. So I'd like to welcome you this morning to our WPSA, our annual WPSA Lecture. Before we get started, I want to welcome a few people. We've got a few key WPSA people in the audience. We've got Francine Bradley, who is our WPSA Treasurer. Francine. And members of the WPSA Canada Board. Are there any Canadian WPSA board members? I'm sure there's some here somewhere. Okay, we got a couple. And members of the WPSA USA Board. We've got a few of those here. Okay. And I promised that I would stick to a script for Mike Kidd because I've known Mike for a lot of years, and we better stick to a script instead of telling the stories you'd like to hear. Mike has degrees from NC State and Arkansas. After a 5-year stint with NutriQuest, he then served as Poultry Science Department Head at Mississippi State University. After that, he then led the University of Arkansas Center of Excellence for Poultry Science for almost 10 years before returning to his current faculty position. Mike's contributions have been broad and impactful, and we all know well some of those. He was recently named the holder of the Adeseo Endowed Professorship in Global Sustainable Poultry Nutrition. That's a mouthful. That's a good job. He's authored over 450 publications, and what's really important, he's mentored over 60 graduate students over his career. And although Mike has spent most of his career in academics, I do consider Mike one of the most knowledgeable and respected industry experts in the fields of poultry nutrition management and health. Today, Mike's lecture is entitled Global Challenges in Poultry Nutrition. Mike?
All right, thank you, sir. Hey, thank you so much for that introduction. How'd y'all like the introduction from KFC? I really like that. He talked about the chicken crossing the road. There was a hen, and she wouldn't cross. She just stopped in the middle. Anybody know why? She wanted to lay it on the line. Okay, so come on, y'all, wake up. Bob was like, I got to go on script. So I told John Cole. John said, we got to apologize. We have to set up the monitor and the computer and all that before you talk. I said, no, you don't. I don't know what I'm going to say anyway. It's going to be just fine. So I can kind of see the slides from here, so everything's going to work out good. So Bruce invited me, and it's an honor to be here for this presentation. But Bruce is not here. So I can let you know that it was an invitation. It was also an assignment. So Bruce came up with the title, and I changed it a bit. He said, no, he changed it back. It's going to be global. It's going to be all poultry. I said, who's giving the talk, Bruce? So anyway, Bruce will be here a little bit later. But it really is a pleasure to be here and to talk to you today about some concepts. In doing so, when I had this charge, I said, we'll make it positive. We'll talk about opportunities. We'll talk about challenges. And I made this slide, and I said, this is how I'm going to preface the talk. And I set it on my desk. I printed it out, and I set it there, and I'm going to put all my topics under it. And after about 2 weeks, I didn't have any topics. So I called Bruce, and I said, all right, let's get planning, Bruce, and let's work on this. So I did what I do a lot of times. I went back to my class notes. And this is a pretty big classroom this morning, but that's what it's going to be like today. Integrated Poultry Systems Management. That is a lecture that I've been able to do over the past decade or so, and it's a pleasure to have this course. And I'm going to preface this lecture a little bit like that course. In doing so, talking about the integrated operation as it sits, supply chain management, and cost accounting flow, like an AgriStat book, across every cost center, and how nutrition can play an important role in that. So if you look at nutrition and where it sits in the middle of all this, we always say 60-70% of live cost. Absolutely. So if you cut that slide in half and go above on the live side, that is 60-70%. Please keep in mind, we've got half of our business and half of our costs tied up in the processing plant. So roughly on an integrated operation, what we're going to talk about today is 30-35% of all the operation and what we can do to impact that. And that's how I'll preface this. However, when Bruce gave me this charge, he said, Mike, Dr. Havenstein has not been introduced for his award that he received at WPSA. So he was inducted into the International Poultry Hall of Fame. Now, I told Bruce, I said, this is not just a task for me. This is an absolute honor and I'll tell you why. So Dr. Havenstein, you see the career path there through his degrees at Kansas State, then at Wisconsin, and then when he moved into H&N, went to Ohio State to be the department head, and then NC State. And that's where I met Dr. Havenstein. He brought me into NC State with Mukarab Qureshi, who's on the front row in the corner over there. Peter Firkett as well. Is Peter here? I don't see Peter. Raise your hand. Hey, Peter's not here. Peter, well, that's just terrible. But anyway, I needed him to be here because if you don't like what I say, these are the two reasons why I'm here. But Dr. Havenstein was at NC State, brought me in. I did turkey breeder nutrition. And when you do turkey breeder nutrition and immunology, you don't go home very much. So most of my holidays were at Jerry and Joyce's Havenstein's or Peter and Debbie Firkett's with Mukarab. So I needed to give that introduction for Dr. Havenstein for this presentation, and it's fitting to do so because my first slide on data is his work from 2003. The bottom two horizontal x-axis lines represent growth development from 2 strains. Within those strains, I superimposed a high-yield 708 on top of those for his data. So if you look at what we have in terms of the ability to accrete protein and how to balance that nutritionally, it is absolutely phenomenal. If you see the top line on the 708s, it takes the same trajectory as the birds from the early 2000s, but it's double the meat, and that is just phenomenal. I don't know another industry that can say they've done so much with that, and we have to credit our geneticists for what we have. And with nutrition and management, we're fixing about 20% of it, but 80% of what we're given is coming from them, and we have to thank you. With that in mind, I've got a lecture part from class. This deals with the primary breeder companies. So this is from the 1970s, and you see the 22 primary breeder companies that are listed here. There's a number of them, and the red on the bottom part of that is Mike Donahue looked at my slides with AgriStats. He helped me on some of these concepts I'm talking about today. But he said, Mike, you missed 3. And I said, well, I've been teaching this for 10 years, and a lot of it came from Stan Reed, his notes in his file. But if you see the primary breeder companies that he added in red, those 3 there, in addition to the ones, the images there go into the 1980s, and we all know what we have now with 2. So in terms of these 2, they've done phenomenal improvements in what we have on performance. This is looking at feed conversion. This goes from in the 80s to 2023. And with that improvement, it's just phenomenal, the number of points that we've seen. So how many grad students do we have in the room? Raise your hands, the ones that are out there. Undergraduates, 2. Undergraduates, 2. John, you said there was over 200 grad students. I don't see all of them. Okay, y'all are, okay, I see some of you raised 2 hands. Okay, that's good, that's good. Some of your friends are in the bed right now, right? Okay, I bring that point up because this slide is some projections, and it goes to 2050, okay? So graduate students, if this gig works out, if you stay in poultry and you make a career out of it, you're gonna be in the peak of your career in 2050. Okay, you're going to be in the peak of your career. Look at the feed conversion that we can potentially have. So what I did is I looked from 2000 to present, and that's about 23 points. And then I created an equation to give us feed conversion based on that to 2050, and that's 21 points in about 26 years. Very conservative. And I've even taken into consideration the decrease in feed intake that our genetic companies are giving us every year. That's not even in this model. So it's very, very conservative. So this is a pretty big deal in what we're gonna be working with, okay? The feed conversion efficiency of these birds is really saving the world. So we're gonna go from 12 plus pounds we have now per bird on an 8-pound bird. We're gonna cut that to 10.5. Okay, on a normal complex of 1 million birds, that's gonna be 1.5 pound feed. That's 750 tons of feed a week that we save in a real small complex. So that's a lot of improvements of efficiency. We have that to work with, and we have to credit our geneticists. But if you think nutrition is important now, think about how much less feed we're going to have to be able to get it done. And I think there's some talks and some symposia this afternoon that are going to be addressing some of these things. My charge was to give the challenges and opportunities, not to solve any problems. I hope you don't think you're getting any answers today. Sorry about that. I'll hopefully give you something to think about. But phenomenal what we have to work with, okay? Phenomenal. This one also as well looks at calorie conversion. We take that in addition to with our feed intake and the decrease that we have over time. The efficiencies there are good. I also took this and I plotted this, okay? So I went to 2050 based on a 5-pound bird. So there are tremendous improvements we have in terms of productivity. So we take, that's a 5-pound bird, but we got the KFC Yum Center right over here. I'm not going to tell any more, chicken jokes, but we take a KFC market, so take a value bone-in bird, 4.2 pounds. Microphone's cutting out a little bit. If it gives y'all a problem, just raise your hand, tell me to back up and speak up or something. Take that bird, for example, okay? If we look at that, finishing that right now, it's 32, 31 days. Finishing that bird. If we look at these efficiencies, we're going to be, 26, 25 days at 2050. So we got 504 hours in the incubator, maybe 560, 570 in the field. We're going to be feeding them by the hour, okay, right? So you students have a lot of things you're going to be able to see and a lot of efficiencies to glean going into the future. So in terms of challenges and opportunities, I think we need to hug our geneticists when we see them, but there are only 2. Wish there were a little bit more, but we're going to be fine with that. But I'm very, very optimistic on the future and where we're headed with all of our genetics. So let's talk about some things as we keep going forward. By the way, I don't have a timer, and I'm just rambling, so I'm going to rely on you, Bob, to I don't even have my clock, so this could be scary. I could derail the whole first day. Okay, but let's talk about something. This slide I put up here, this is with the layer industry, and I've been teaching layer production since Mississippi State. That was another assignment. It's fun to do, so I'm still teaching layer production. But I always talk about the molt, feeding the birds for the molt, et cetera, et cetera. And from what Dr. Laura has told me, we've got a situation where we're pushing these birds without a molt. And I guess I don't know why. I guess it was in social media or something. That's why we're changing our industry. I have no idea. But when you look at this, how are we gonna come up with those nutrient requirements over time? How are we going to maintain our case weights? I think this is a challenge, and I think this one I'm a little bit more of a challenge part on this because I'm not sure how we're going to get that data. The maintenance requirements of that bird when she's not refeathering after a molt, et cetera, and how we're going to maintain that going into long-term grow outs. Now what I'd like to do is switch to ingredient quality. I want to take you back to a meeting that Dave Burnham put together. He got all of us together in Indianapolis, and I said, Dave, what are we going to do? He said, dang it, Mike, we're going to figure out how to incorporate digestible amino acids into the United States market. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to talk about it. You're going to help. So we had a meeting, we talked about it, a lot of individuals there. I see Dave Wicker in the back. He was front and center at this meeting and very vocal, and we looked at a number of different things in terms of the outcome, and I can't see these as I'm clicking, so I'm just going to get through them here, and because I know what I'm going to say, I just can't see them. So the point was the outcome of this meeting is availability, digestibility of certain ingredients with quality that varies tremendously, i.e. rendering. So I can remember sitting down with certain nutritionists at that time. They say, Mike, if I've got 5, 6, 7% poultry meal and I've got a 20 to 30% spread based on variability, why am I ever going to convert to digestible amino acids? Well, we worked it out. The industry worked it out. We got improvements in efficiencies, and we converted, and you see where we're at. L-threonine is now common. I can remember Chevy's in the room somewhere. Chevy's in the best. Chevy's right there. First use of L-threonine in the United States of America, 1997, Pelahatchie, Mississippi. I'm taking you back, Chevy. You didn't think you were going to hear that this morning, did you? I'm glad you're here. That has paved the way for other amino acids. I met with Jason last week. We're having breakfast, and he said, Mike, can you imagine? We've got bulk threonine being delivered to facilities now, all because of this improvement, understanding better the nutrient composition, and being able to formulate more precision. So it's helped tremendously in what we do. I'd like to talk about nutrient availability and some low-hanging fruit here. Low-hanging fruit, you see the soybeans that are off the vine right there. What I'd like to talk about, and I know we have a symposium coming up, and they're going to provide all the answers. Greg Engelke's going to tell you everything you need to know. What I'm going to point out are some things that Gordon Denny and I have talked about for years. We have such an opportunity in this country, and i.e. the world, based on our increased oilseed production in this country. If you see the map with the yellow companies, those are companies that are slated for 2024, 2025 expansion or new brick and mortar for crush facilities, okay? The numbers are 1,000 metric tons per day that are there for those particular facilities. There's never been a better time for the poultry industry to partner with the crush industry for efficiencies. I talked to Gordon on the phone. I said, Gordon, can you tell me how many facilities have NIR? He said, hold on just a minute. Let me think about it. And then he stopped me as we continued to talk on last week, and he said, I can't think of a single facility that does not have NIR. So we have the NIR on the beans going in. We have the NIR on the meal coming out. None of that comes to the integrators. Okay, none of it's coming to them. I realize when we talk about what's going to come to a tractor trailer or what's going to go into a rail car, that's going to get dumped in a silo, and there's a lot of variability. But the possibilities are $20 a ton. So can we work out some of this? Can we single source? Can we do some things that are going to improve efficiencies? I think that's really low-hanging fruit. What about exports? Okay. You talk about a bin, well, these ships, and the hatches of these ships are huge, okay? So if you have a value on it, and you have your trypsin inhibitor and all those values within NIR is going to give you amino acid digestibility, what does that do? Well, if we got $20 a ton in the U.S., it's probably going to be more like 30, 35 internationally. I think you could put some NIRs on some cargo ships and give everybody a QR code when you dump in the truck, whether you're in Indonesia or wherever you're at. I mean, if I was at USEC, I'd be all over that. But I just think, I hate to harp on that, but I think it's tremendous opportunity. And opportunities now, because with these new crush plants, you have new leadership. So it's never been a better time to partner more with the soybean industry and move forward in some of these efficiencies. Okay, speaking of efficiencies and partnering and new modern technology, let's go back to 1950s. So the first least cost formula that I could find is in dairy science, 1951. Hutton is the first formula that I'm able to find. Okay, Wicker, I'm challenging you now too. You've got to focus on this. He's going to be my check step, not because he knows everything, because he was young during this time. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm glad you're here. With this was the first formula in broilers. There was resistance to this. The big resistance came from methionine in the diet. If you look at the price of methionine, it's almost half of that of soybean meal. Industry took a long time to wrap their heads around that one, but they did. Okay, so let's get off a formula from the 1950s and do something more modern in the industry. So let me take you on to the 60s. Okay, that's a little bit more modern. So this is from Leland Tollett. So I had to put together a program. This has been years ago. I got Tillman involved, a number of people involved. I basically had to do a review on the history of amino acid nutrition. And in doing so, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have lunch with Leland Tollett. So he's pretty direct, pretty organized. He's like, all right, Mike, when we meet and what are we going to talk about? We're going to meet at 11. We're going to have a nice lunch, and we're going to talk poultry nutrition. Okay, so we sit down for lunch, and he reaches back behind him, and he flips on the table all his formulas from the 1960s. He had them bound in a book. So we went through them, and we talked about things. These were for consultancies. So you see with the math that's written on there, those are hand calculation adjustments. Why do I harp on this? Well, we're basically doing the same thing now. Okay, we haven't really changed in terms of the linear algorithm. Now, I'm very, very optimistic about this. There are individuals out there in this crowd that are doing nonlinear formulation. You can adjust it with global equations, and you can create nonlinearity, and I'm sure digestibilities, for example, I'm sure a lot of it is happening, but more inline, more real-time, with the opportunity for nonlinearity, I think is going to be very positive going forward. In addition to this, new technologies, for example, new technologies coming. I want to show you one, okay, that I'm partial to, because this is a computer science team at Arkansas that I work with in computer science and computer engineering, and this is one of our recent world patents. It's on real-time body weight projections per bird, per minute, anywhere in the chicken house. The biggest problem is occlusion. The second biggest problem is dust, because obviously when you have cameras, you'll be able to see something. But this has tremendous implications with the small bird. The KFC was just here. I hate to keep talking about KFC, but I love KFC, and we're by the Yum Center, and he was just here. I had no idea Colonel Sanders was going to be here. Anyway, think about the young bird. Think about the efficiency in terms of uniformity that we could have in that particular scenario. Think about the big bird. Think about telling the plant, here's what your yield values are going to be coming out of the plant on Friday when the birds are still in the field on Wednesday. So opportunities here. That said, I think there are numerous artificial intelligence platforms that are available for the industry, and they are going to be embraced all across the board. The health platforms are already available. Some of the nutritional platforms are becoming available, and they're going to be embraced. And they're going to be embraced, in my opinion, based on the culture of the integrator, on how the integrator makes money and the culture and what they like to do, what makes them excited about their jobs. So they're going to be all tailored a little bit differently, like processing plants are all built a little bit differently. But I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more data acquisition, okay? I don't know, first computer I used was 1988, okay? And I could make that thing hum. I think one of the worst years I've had with computer technology is the current year, okay, on the different software platforms we have to deal with. So the more technology we get, the harder it gets, okay? We're going to need more people. We're going to need computer science teams. We're going to need data analytics. The software is going to help, but it's going to require people to help figure things out, and I think what it's going to do is put the nutritionist and the veterinary teams right in the center to help solve the problems going forward. And I think it's going to be phenomenal, and I think it's going to occur sooner rather than later. So I feel very optimistic about the future and the improvements that we're going to be able to put. How am I doing on time? Doing good? Because I have no idea. Is Bedford in the crowd? Bedford? He drank too much last night. Bedford should be here, right? Okay, he'd be here. Anyway, sorry he couldn't see this, but I had to put this. The amazing exogenous enzyme, okay? And I have not done a lot of phytase research, but we have to give credit to where credit's due. If you look at enzyme spending, that's very mature in this market. It's very mature in most of the world. The ROI on phytase, there is not a question at all, okay? Even with going more than 1,500 FTUs, there's not a question on ROI. So it's just amazing what's happened in terms of that. I'm very partial to Dr. Nelson. So with Dr. Nelson, he was very optimistic on the phytase work back in the 1960s, okay? This was his Florida Nutrition Conference, and he talked about digestible calcium, okay? At that particular nutrition conference, he cited his data from 1968. So the story here, and Dr. Nelson has recently passed away, but he spent a lot of time with me in the office, and the idea behind this was he was at IMC. So IMC back in the 1960s says, we've got a mold that produces an enzyme that's going to replace rock phosphorus. It's going to kill our market. So they didn't just ban the project. They banned the project, and they fired everybody in it, okay? That took place in the 1960s. BASF came along in the 1990s, okay? Not exactly positive about how all that started, but it started and it worked, okay? But now it's phenomenal what has happened with this particular market. Now we've got the South Africans, okay, Dr. Plumstead and his group, they're working to provide us all the information on digestible calcium with limestone solubility. It's changing and revolutionizing the industry, in my opinion. Why show a slide from, well, I'm showing everything old, but why show a slide from the early days in terms of mineral needs? Most of the mineral research that was conducted before 1950 was all done so in diseases. And then thereafter, there were some requirement estimates, but it was with various low availability salts, and most of the data is sparse till this day. So why do I bring in that? I bring that up, and I guess there's a committee meeting this afternoon on nutrition, and they're going to give you all the answers, but we've got to rewrite the book. Modeling is going to be phenomenal. Prediction equations are going to be phenomenal, but we've got to have some data. And we've got to relook at our minerals with forms that are more relevant. If we look at the zinc finger DNA, it's cysteine and histidine. Okay, zinc does not like to sit in the salt like you feed it. Okay, Karen Wiedekind showed in the 1992 it's 206% less available on a sulfate form versus zinc methionine. Okay, that's a specific 1 to 1 to 1 for zinc methionine and sulfate. So the opportunity we have to reassess nutrition is phenomenal. I feel good about it, but we've got to get some data, and we've got to take a starting point somewhere. So let me switch gears for a minute, talk about vitamins. This was a charge I had from DSM, and this was in 2009. So I was preparing to leave Mississippi State in 2009, go to Arkansas. So I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to give this talk. They said, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. What am I speaking on? Vitamins. So I said, okay, it's my first week on the job at IPPE at Arkansas. Let's make this thing work. And they sent me the title as broiler breeders, and I said, y'all are killing me. So that's a tough one to pull off. But we pulled this one off, and I went through the literature, and Steve Leeson's data, he had just published a very nice review in World's Poultry Science. And if you look at that graph, okay, I can't see it, but I know what it says. So you've got alpha tocopherols, and it goes from 85 to some year. What year does it go to? 05 maybe? Yeah, thank you, Bob. The delta is a negative 1% vitamin E per year. That's just based on increased egg production in a leghorn. Okay, that's all it is. If you take a broiler breeder, you have to consider they're going to be eating less feed every year. Okay, that doesn't even take into consideration that concept. So the vitamins, in addition to the minerals, we need a lot of work on that. And I think it's going to be very important going forward. I think vitamins is national security importance, and I think it's global security for a lot of other countries as well. So we're going to have to take a look and reassess some of this. Can there be some programming? For example, nutritional programming. Got Dr. Qureshi on the front row. Here's a world leader right here on epigenetics, sitting on the front row. Can we program those birds? Can we feed them certain levels? Dr. Fouquet's not here. Since he's not here, I'll keep calling his name out, give him a hard time about it. He's done research to look at in ovo administration of various sources of metals, like zinc, and the different metal forms he puts in ovo give different responses post-hatch. So we can program and we can change. Back in the early 2000s, we did data with progeny carryover of zinc, and we were trying to look at the early effect on health, seven-day livability. We carried those birds out, and they had more breast meat yield by different zinc sources from the broiler breeder. So there's a lot of things I think we can change. Maybe the committee this afternoon is going to talk about it, nutritional programming, nutrigenomics, epigenetics, but at the end of the day, regardless of what we're changing, we still need to know how that bird responds. So we've got to get some data in terms of being able to do some of these models, okay? Very important going forward. So opportunities, absolutely, but also challenges there. There's not a lot of us doing this research anymore, so we've got to really get it focusing. With regard to the vitamins, for example, I want to talk about a paper that Ken Anderson and I put together a few years ago. This is a spin-off of teaching egg production over time. And why put this paper together? Well, when I started teaching egg production at Mississippi State, the students would be like, why would we ever want to put those hens on the ground? What the hell are you thinking? At Arkansas, it's like, why would we ever want to put those hens in a cage? I'm like, good God, I'm going to write a book on this just to give some information to the youth about why we've done what we've done. So that's how all this started. But we had an entire section in this on one egg, okay, one egg chapters. Okay, what's a one egg chapter? Well, it's a chapter that provides one egg a day. So this is Zamora feed mill in Musanze, Rwanda. This one has Donnie Smith's footprint on it. And Katie, who you see over there, she is an Arkansas graduate from 2009. So her undergraduate thesis was one egg chapters. And what she did is she measured long bones in the arm. So she would take a long bone measurement on the children from eating one egg a day with rice and beans versus just kids eating rice and beans. The development improvements were phenomenal. Why bring this up? We had a conversation last week, and I said, Katie, because she's in Rwanda now. She worked for a number of companies here in the U.S. She said, I can't do this anymore. I got to get back to East Africa where I want to work. So I said, how many operations in Rwanda? Because she's in charge of all of them. I thought she had 2 or 3 now. She's at 52. Okay, she's at 52. She's basically taken the infrastructures of a 4-house farm where you brood on 1 and you have production in 3, and she's raised the roofs, put them all in cages, gone from 15,000 birds to 50,000 birds. You pay them off in 45 weeks. You got to make money to have this thing work. Then the rest of it's gravy, and she's making money. So we talked about the opportunity of nutritional modeling for those. Increased vitamins, basically an Eggland's Best egg in Africa. And we liked what we talked about, and we're kind of moving forward on some of those projects. But that's her terminology up there, the packageable component of an egg and what it can do to help feed the world. If you look at migration, everything that's happening, we don't have all those answers in the socioeconomic issues around the world. But if you look at the top 5 problems, food's probably front and center somewhere in all of them, and we can really make a difference. Okay, more recent data. Titus, 1941. Dr. Maynard loves that stuff. That was one of his favorite books. Looks like the amino acid density stuff we're doing right now, doesn't it? Basically, in the early 1940s, it was amino acid density. It was driven by this time. The books were already published in vitamin premixes, mineral premixes, but with amino acids, they were not talking about single sources yet. It was only until the early 1960s, late 50s, where this started happening. I'm very partial to this paper. This has got Jim Garlick on it. Jim was one of my mentors, also at NC State. And this is the first paper in poultry science that I can find, actually. It was complemented by Harms and Waldrop 2 years later in British Poultry Science. But this is the first work looking at formulating to amino acids and the precision that you can find when you hit all the requirements on the head, and they showed that. Now take that a step forward. I just mentioned Dr. Maynard. I got to do it again. This is some data that he published during his PhD. I think we've come a long way looking at the efficiencies of utilization, the antagonisms. This is one where we said, well, we've got DDGs in the diet, for example. They keep going up. We got our leucine levels going up because it's all corn-based. So do we have antagonisms that we talked about 30, 40 years ago that are actually relevant in the industry now? And in some situations, we showed it is, and some we showed it didn't. But we're making lots of improvements in terms of that situation. Still good on time, Bob? Yeah, actually tell me how much. 10 minutes. That helps. 50, oh, you're going to give me some more? All right. We'll talk about this 10 minutes, and no, we'll keep moving. We're doing good. Dose response curve. I put this up here for a couple of reasons. We've got, for example, protease. Let's talk about that. This curve is how an amino acid nutritionist looks at formulating amino acids. So we have 70% deficient. We go 20% above. We determine a response. We back off 95%. We use that mathematically based on a regression. If you use Kelly Robbins' two-slope methodology in SAS that he published, you're going to get 92 to 93% of an asymptote. Okay, why don't we call it 100? Because we're not that good, and we just look at one amino acid, so we got to be conservative, okay? With all the opportunities to protease and everything else coming out, it's important to note that they're right on top of the curve, improving 2 to 3%. So I want all of these allied industry products to work, but I think we got to get smart in how we look at some of these things going forward, because they will be on the market just like phytase, and it behooves of us not to better understand them. With regard to the amino acids, I feel really good about this. We got Blake Nelson's, he's going to talk about histidine tomorrow. Jason, when Dr. Lee and I talked last week, basically we got to look at phenylalanine tyrosine, and we're getting down on the list for precision nutrition and having all these things solved. So after that, it's semi-essential amino acids like better understanding glycine and then looking into proline and some others. So I think we're really close to a lot of tools for precision nutrition. Okay, ooh, gosh, I forgot I had all these in here. Maybe 10 minutes. Let's talk about markets. Yeah, I forgot I had these in here. Surprise. I'm glad I can kind of see these slides. So corn prices. We got some good news, don't we? It's really, really big deal. So when you see your integrators, nutritionists from companies in the room, feed cost relief, gosh, it's important. How big a deal is this? If you see the first curve, I haven't used a pointer yet, and I can barely see this, and it doesn't work. There's no pointer on this thing. All right, I wish I had a stick or something, but you see the first increase. Okay, 2007, 2008, 2009. How big a deal is that? December 1st, 2008. The largest company in the United States, I guess second, got files for Chapter 11. Okay? Yes, there was a lot of debt load with the company, but when the corn price is increasing and you got to make a decision, you get on the wrong side of corn, it's just such a big deal, and I'm so glad we see feed cost relief. We see the same thing with bean meal. Okay, a lot of this based on what we just talked about earlier with the oilseed production going to biodiesel, but prices coming in for feed cost relief, really phenomenal. I took corn and I put it back on a short ton. Sorry, it's not a metric ton, it's a short ton, okay? So I put them back on a short ton and I looked at ratios of them. And if you see the lines, the first line, okay, when you're up to 70, for example, that's gonna favor a situation where you've got feed-grade amino acids. Sorry, I'm backwards. Well, you see the one in the 30s, that's your feed-grade amino acid favor, and the smaller one is amino acid density. So these are going to vary tremendously on opportunities for nutritionists to move the needle and to make money. But if you look at the ratio over time, it's about a 50, okay, in terms of how it splits. So what I did is I did some formulation examples, and I used that 50 ratio. Used corn-soy diets with and without poultry meal, with and without DDGs, looking at feed-grade amino acid levels, soybean meal levels, okay? This is based on arginine as the first limiting amino acid in the diet because arginine basically is set in the crude protein level at a 105, okay? That's where that's at. If we take this and we say, okay, here's our scenarios that we've got right now, that's kind of small, isn't it? Can y'all see that? I can't see anything, but I don't know if in the back you can see it. But that's basically saying, okay, we're going to go forward. We're going to go to 2050. So you've got Dr. Lee and CJ and everyone. We're going to have, okay, L-arginine, and probably maybe a free base, maybe HCl. We'll have histidine will be an HCl, tryptophan, and then isoleucine. If we look at those four going forward, we're potentially going from 5 pounds on average, a short ton of L-lysine HCl. L-lysine is a standard, so if you're using liquid or sulfate, it's going to be higher than that, to 10 pounds a ton, okay, by 2050. So that's the projection, but I think a lot of opportunity for precision nutrition with different opportunities. And I mentioned this is all positive, all challenge with protease going into the non-essential ratios, et cetera. Okay, I'm going to finish. So we're doing good, Bob. We're going to have some concluding thoughts, and we're going to finish. Look at the feed conversion that we've got in some of these countries. These are all Asian countries. And I worked with Alex De Leon and a couple of friends to get this data. These are some pretty good numbers. They're smoking. Okay, look at there's two sleeping giants on this chart for the future of the poultry industry, in my opinion. They both start with an I, but we could take our feed conversions here, if we wanted to. With our big bird. With the 8-pound bird that I showed on that market, we're giving up, 30, 35 points of feed conversion. Could we go back to this? Well, it'd be stupid to go back because we'd lose money, right? We'd lose money. So let me talk about that and explain why. Steve Boland put this together at the Arkansas Nutrition Conference in 2014. He basically demonstrated, and this is static. This is just looking at one set of prices. So basically demonstrated on amino acid density, it depends on your market share and profitability. Got Rob Gauss sitting right here front and center. His program with EFGs talked about this for decades. But it basically demonstrates feeding for the ROI is going to be completely different depending upon what you're selling, okay? Because you don't sell feed conversion, you sell chicken, okay? So I put together an example from class. These are from my class notes, and I actually struggled for a while. I met with Hunter Walters a couple days ago. I said, what should I do on this? He's like, just use your class. It's going to be fine. So this is from class, okay? So it's income over feed cost per bird to look at some scenarios. So we take a diet here. Man, I wish I could see those numbers. I think the top one's 275, isn't it, Bob? Bob's going to do thumbs up or thumbs down as I guess, all right? So with this analysis, if you take income over feed costs, and we're using a WOG, and that's last week's USDA AMS projection of $1.32, I think it was, for a WOG to get income over feed costs per bird. Let's improve this. Let's put some nutrition in this feed, and let's improve it. And we increased it $5 a ton, and we got 2 points of feed conversion, and we lost money. Okay, so you can take your projections of the income over feed costs and tie that back into what you had at that feed cost per bird, and you can figure out you need 3.1 points of feed conversion to make that meet. So if we superimpose another analogy and we get 3.1 points of feed conversion, it's the same number. So what have we done here? We haven't done anything. We're just spending a dime to make a nickel. But I think at the end of the day, when we go in the future for the poultry industry, the number one thing and the number one opportunity from the current challenge, and this is how I finish this presentation, is looking at profitability, looking at income over feed costs per kilo or per pound of wings, of paws, of certain parts from the breast. And that is the only way to do it. It will not be driven by feed conversion whatsoever. Feed conversion will be there, but it's going to be based on sales. When I mentioned giving up 35 points of feed conversion to go back, we in this country, we have half of our industry that has a big bird. We have feed prices that allow that to happen. Okay, the shackles are a fixed cost. The bird is a variable cost. If we improve the fixed over variable cost ratio, we're going to make money, and that's why we have a big bird in this country. So it's not feed cost driven, it's profit driven from a plant. And I think the future for the world, and I'm not knocking any country that still has whole birds or small birds, I think it's wonderful. But every country's got to figure out how to make profitability, whatever they're selling, into those markets. So opportunities all the way around. Okay, so I'm about to finish, Dr. Burrish, but I'm gonna do something for WPSA. I had this charge, and this is an honor. If you see all of the presentations that have been there over the past, and now we've got a chicken nutritionist who's basically just telling stories and rambling today. It's been an honor to be able to give the WPSA projection. But Dr. Burrish, what I did is I formed a committee to help you going forward, based on all the charges and all the work that everybody's got to do, and we came up with the 10-year next ones. So your work is done. Okay, it's all good. It's all good. So hey, y'all have a good PSA week, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Burrish, and I think he's going to do some introduction. Oh, I got questions probably. Y'all are wondering why I didn't answer any questions. So you got good. Oh, Sammy DeReedy, don't get too excited. I knew he'd be first. See if you can push it, because there's so many people in the back of the room, they want to hear you. I'm not sure I want to hear you. Oh, here's another one. Yeah, I don't know how to turn the thing on.
Thank you, Dr. Kidd.
You bet.
Thank you for your elegant presentation. Basically, you touch base to every component in diet, from amino acids, mineral, vitamins, enzymes. What about water?
Absolutely. So Dr. DeReedy is making a point about water. I think water conversion is going to be very important, and we know there are feeding strategies where we can decrease that. I always tell the story in class about Sanderson Farms. In Sanderson, when I sit down with Pick Billingsley and Joe Frank Sanderson when I was in Mississippi State, they said, "We're going to the California market. We're gonna sell our birds in the West Coast market." I said, "So how are you going to do that?" He said, "We're going to Texas. We're going to stop in Bryan College Station. We're going to stop in Waco." I said, "Why don't you go further?" I said, "That's as far as we can go west without running out of water to run a poultry complex." So water is going to be very important. I think I'll just say it at that. You know, water quality, as Dr. Watkins talked about for decades, water quantity, with which we can change with amino acid density, with other things in the diet. But absolutely, if it's a challenge, but if some of you that are building research facilities, if you can incorporate functionalities to look at water intake, it would just add another parameter to really make your data set stronger. Or you can publish a water conversion with the feed conversion. It's harder to do, but if you can do it, I think it's worth it in today's world. So thanks, Dr. DeReedy. Yeah.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dr.
Hi.
Bilkey.
Hi, thanks for the class on nutrition. It's been a long time for me. So you did a lot of talking about how we're still kind of doing the same thing in nutrition. I should say y'all, not we, because I'm not involved in it. So y'all are still doing pretty much the same thing that was happening 80 years ago in terms of your calculations and thinking about it. But we don't make progress by doing it the same way we've always done it. So what are y'all doing or seeing in the future as like a new way to figure out these amino acids? It looked like Craig's paper was kind of going there a little bit, but it's way more complicated than one paper. So
Dr. Bilkey, thank you. I think we're close with regard to precision nutrition, which means more nutrient specs to use in that same model that we've been doing for 80 years. One of the keys, one of the low-hanging fruit for us is to better understand what our ingredient variability is. The symposium coming up in the soybean world, I know there's other companies like Evonik that are collecting like lots of data on ingredient quality, and that is phenomenal. And then when we take that and we build upon that, and we do some nonlinear formulation, but I think NIR is going to help tremendously because there's variation. We're always looking in the rearview mirror, and there's no way to change that based on the volumes that we have. So some of it we're stuck, but we're getting better with NIR. So yeah.
Hey, Mike. As
Sergio.
usual, excellent presentation. Your numbers about the possibility for feed conversion and body weight gain in the future, they are because of the genetic potential. But what is your opinion about this free range? Because that breaks the. I'd like to hear your
My
opinion
opinion
on
on
that.
free range?
Yes.
That's stupid. I mean, we have diseases. I mean, we have to control this. I mean, Sergio, we'll have a beer later on this. But, I mean, I don't even know how to comment on that. I mean, if you've got certain birds that are laying eggs and that there's a market, I can understand that. But broilers, I used to do that when I was small. Then I went to school. I don't know. But yeah, what else should I say about that? Dr. Burris, you're laughing at me pretty good there in the front row. But no, I mean, if that's a niche market, that's great. Okay, that's a niche market, that's great. Do we need to spend time and money there? They've already thrown out efficiency, so we don't need to do anything. Just let them.
I agree with you because it's sustainability, and they are not pets, basically.
Well, that's the opposite of sustainability. Yeah. So, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? There's got to be a grad student that wants to ask something.
Oh, Dr. Wicker. I knew he would get stimulated based on those slides from the 1940s.
That is correct. My first formulas were run on a Monroe accumulating calculator, not even a computer.
Yep.
So they came out in the 70s with Computone.
Right.
That was the only available computer that the average nutritionist had at the time. So to give you the history. But congratulations, you hit a number of topics that are, I see, continuing. NIR
Yep.
is fantastic. I and a number of leading nutritionists, though, lament that the implementation is extremely slow. It'll cost you $500,000 today. You'll gain it back in a little over a year on the average U.S. operation. The other one is, two other ones, is modeling that you bring up, and precision of modeling will help us a lot. The last one is we have a habit of expressing nutrient requirements in percentages of this, percentages of that. That's for the convenience of the feed mill.
That's right.
A nutritionist would look at how many milligrams of intake of each nutrient. So I would encourage you to look at milligrams of intake per bird. It makes things a lot simpler. So just some comments. Excellent presentation, Mike.
No, thank you, Dr. Wicker. And I was supposed to say a little bit more on that when I talked about, feeding birds by the hour instead of by the day. But I think we're going to have that opportunity to be more precise with that. So thank you so much, Dr. Wicker. Yep.
Any
With
more
regard
questions?
to the models, I think they're great. I've done so much with the artificial intelligence team at Arkansas, and their biggest problem in everything they do is unsupervised data. So as all these models are great, we are going to have generate data to back them up. So I'm optimistic, though. We good?
I'll make one comment. We did have a nutritionist, Mike Duncan. I don't know if you ever knew Mike, Holly Farms nutritionist, and he sorted soybean meal 3 different ways with NIR, and within 6 months he paid for the whole system. He went low, medium, and high as it was coming into the feed mill. Just didn't know exact, but he would go low, medium, and high.
That's great.
And sorted it and paid for it. Yeah.
And we changed our feed mills, and Dr. Wicker, you can correct me on this, but we changed our feed mill structures after ethanol. So we had to expand a little bit and have a few more bins. Well, that's just a few. If you go to Europe, they might have 20, 30 small little bins around the feed mill. So if we have opportunities, not just to mimic that, but to create capabilities to segregate, sort, and keep things that are analyzed, it's just so much more money, precision, yeah.
Would be all the way
Dr.
across the room.
Greg
Engelke.
Engelke. He's going to get ready for his symposium.
Amazes.
Just to follow up there, I think one of the things we have to take into consideration, probably better than what we have in the past, is we have knowledge, but it's about implementing it. And that's where we fall.
Yeah.
From the standpoint is we don't review our processes. We don't challenge ourselves with how did we come up with our predictions?
Right.
Do we really understand the true relationships of
Right.
our measurements as we go along?
Right.
And so we're going to need to have more coordination and a mindset of continuously challenging ourselves and not just assuming that the measurements we're getting are correct.
Right.
And or how do we challenge ourselves, particularly in the feed side of things versus processing. The challenge for capital, the use of capital within an operation is much more difficult to get it for production versus what we can do within a processing plant on FP relative to return on invested capital. And we have to consider those pieces with it. We need to become better salespeople.
Yeah, well, it's sales too, but also I'm 100% with you, Greg. Sales, but also data management. So I got Rocky standing in the back of the room. You know, he formulates feed for a couple hours a week and then just drinks coffee the rest of the week. Sorry, Rocky. The point is, they have no time. They're so busy. There's no time. So if we can supplement the nutrition teams and the vet service teams with data analytics and people to manage all that data and to bring to the table, here's a low-hanging fruit to optimize the integrator. I strongly believe the integrated operations are going to have computer science teams with as much, because the data is not a problem, but interpreting it is a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's where we got to challenge ourselves to lead versus letting the data people lead.
Absolutely.
We have to go hand in
right,
hand.
Right, yeah, that's right, that's right.